So Apple dropped a bombshell at WWDC, but they did it so quietly that I don't think most people even noticed. There were no like flashy slides, no Tim Cook like drawl hype, just a subtle moment, and one that I think might finally fix the iPad or confirm everything that we feared about it. It was not liquid glass. It wasn't the rebrand of every piece of software to a number. It was subtler than that, and it was a blink and you'll miss it subtle. Apple, the company famous for like doubling down, even knowing when they're wrong, finally flinched. And not just flinched, they basically admitted it. The iPad has not been working the way it should. And now they're promising to fix it. For real this time. Maybe because right now, the iPad is standing on a cliff between two very different futures. In one, becomes what I think most people always wanted. A ridiculously powerful, beautifully designed, portable, just does everything machine. In the other, it gets stuck in the tech version of a midlife crisis. Caught between form factors, unsure of its identity, and slowly fading into irrelevance, while the Mac and the iPhone kind of move on without it. But this WWDC, I think Apple flipped a switch that's gonna make the iPad give its long overdue glow up. Or it could be just another software sizzle reel that kind of leaves us exactly where we started. Now look, I'm not one of those people with like 42 custom shortcuts and a Bluetooth foot pedal mapped to like open email, but I've been in this iPad game since the beginning. Camped out, I was there for day one. I remember the OG. I bought it, I used it, I loved it. And the iPad has basically been a travel buddy, a couch companion, a plain distraction device for the better part of 15 years. And I've used every single version from the Mini to the 13-inch Pro, and somewhere along the way, I started feeling a little bit like I was being gaslit. Because here's the thing, the hardware is too good. Like, actually too good. Apple in full like spaceship mode with these things. OLED displays, Thunderbolt ports, Apple Silicon chips that could probably, I don't know, simulate like a moon landing in real time. And like to what end? At least for me, like to run notes. Meanwhile, software has spent years just trying to figure out what it wants to be, whether it's a supersized iPhone or a diet Mac. It's the definition of an identity crisis. And it's especially frustrating because the original iPad didn't really have such an issue. Steve Jobs made it very, very clear. It was never meant to replace your laptop. It was like, it lived in the in-between. Bigger than your iPhone, lighter than your computer, just right. It wasn't pretending to be anything it wasn't, and it crushed that role. So people mocked it as a giant iPod Touch, but it delivered movies, Safari, email, Kindle, all seamless. And that simplicity was a feature, not a flaw. But then Apple did what sometimes Apple does, and they really drank their own Kool-Aid, or let's say sniffed their own farts. Suddenly we got that "What's a Computer" campaign. Still one of the most unintentionally hilarious ads they've ever made, and the narrative shift. Now the iPad is supposed to replace your laptop. Honestly, I kind of bought into it. Actually literally bought into it. When the first iPad Pro came out in 2015, I did a full leave the MacBook behind experiment on a work trip to Germany. I had to shoot some content for BMW, which was a super fun trip. But instead of my usual setup, I just brought the iPad Pro, new smart keyboard, and first gen Apple Pencil. If you remember that thing, right? One that charged by sticking straight out of the lightning port, like a dart. It was like, I don't know, that thing just makes, Apple was like daring you to snap it off. That's another video. Even before that trip though, the cracks in the setup were showing. I tried to upload a file to an email, and I tried to spend way more time than I should have figuring out how to do that, even where that was saved. Trying to move between apps felt like, I don't know, juggling blindfolded. And basic productivity tasks, things that take seconds on a Mac, felt like a puzzle that you just didn't have all the pieces for. I made a whole video about that Germany experience. Links, I'll put it somewhere down below. But the short version, as a tablet, the iPad Pro was bonkers amazing. No complaints. As a laptop replacement, it was maddening. Every time I tried to do something more than respond to an email or scroll through whatever social media, I felt like I was fighting the software. File management was frustrating. Multitasking was a half-baked mess. And don't even get started on how limiting that browser felt. But then, 2018, Apple dropped what I still think is one of the best hardware refreshes of any product ever, the new iPad Pro design. With the flat edges, Face ID, ProMotion, it looked and felt so modern. The people today still aren't calling for a redesign. That almost never happens. But that's when the cracks also started to show too. Because at the time, the iPad was sort of leveling up on the outside. The inside, iPadOS just was not keeping up. It was like Apple kept handing us a supercar, but instead of giving us the keys, they gave us like a speed limit and a warning to just like, don't go too fast. Mac users got nervous, right? Was Apple about to merge macOS and iPadOS? We're gonna wake up one day and find our MacBooks running files.app like it was a feature. Speculation got loud enough that Craig Federighi had to get on stage and explicitly say, quote, "We are not merging the two." He said it with better hair than I have. But we're not merging the two. People clapped, nervous laughter ensued. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. While the Mac community was celebrating, the iPad community was probably left wondering, like, what's the plan? Because if iPadOS wasn't merging with macOS and it clearly wasn't evolving on its own, what exactly are we supposed to believe in on the iPad side? And that question lingered, and Apple didn't answer it. Instead, they shifted focus. And in a twist I don't think many people saw coming, except for maybe Mark Gurman, the Mac suddenly started thriving again. Apple Silicon hit. Battery life was awesome. Performance went through the roof. Mac OS became kind of the golden child of productivity and power. Meanwhile, the iPad, it was just the iPad, it was just chilling there. Kept getting way faster, more beautiful, but every year the gap between what it could do, what Apple let it do, just got more frustrating. Then you'd open Final Cut, I think, get excited, only to realize it was a diet version with fewer features and more limitations. Tried State Manager, I feel like you were juggling windows with mittens on. And since we're kind of talking about ways that Apple and others have tried to make the iPad feel more useful, I want to talk about one of the best upgrades you can make for the iPad for 40 bucks. This video's sponsor, Paperlike. It is a screen protector, for sure, but the real magic is how it changes the feel. It adds subtle texture. It makes the Apple Pencil feel like it's writing on like real paper. Hence paper-like. Not slick glass. No laminated surface, actual paper. It also uses these tiny nanodots to create just enough resistance for better control without sacrificing image quality. You still are getting that crisp Retina display just without the glare this time. In all fairness, seems insanely impressive. Reflections are basically gone. I've used a Paperlike screen protector for notes, for sketching, planning scripts, and it genuinely makes the iPad feel like a proper creative tool. If you are doing anything remotely productive on your iPad, this is one of the easiest upgrades to recommend, hands down. You don't have to buy that top-end iPad Pro to get that matte look. You can get it on any iPad you want. Again, you're not losing brightness. There are only positives to having this. And all that aside, it's also gonna protect your screen from scratches. If you wanna learn more about the Paperlike screen protector, you're picking up for yourself, links will be down below. All right, so back to the video. I don't mean to present this as just like another iPad rant at all, because what Apple just added, I think might be changing everything. Every year the iPad would get a new keyboard, faster chip, better battery life, and then launch a new version of iPadOS. Somehow felt like a side project no one was fully committed to. For years, this cycle repeated. Great hardware, forgettable software. The iPad felt like a priority on paper, but a side project in practice. And then somewhere between Apple Intelligence and Liquid Glass, they dropped something generally surprising. iPadOS 26 finally brings real multitasking, actual windowing, a persistent menu bar, a proper mouse cursor, background processes that don't randomly shut down when you switch apps. And listen, I know this sounds like basic if you're a Mac user, but on an iPad, this is groundbreaking. And the best part, it does not ruin the original tablet vibe at all. The iPad can still be what it always was. An awesome device for watching shows on HBO or Netflix, or browsing TikTok, reading books, and jotting down notes. That version of the iPad is still alive and well. Fast, fluid, responsive, zero fan noise. If you just want a beautiful screen to chill with on the couch, it is undefeated and unchanged. But if you want it to be more, if you're spending north of $1,000 on a Pro model, probably feels like you are getting a machine that can pull double duty. You can, at least for me, you can write scripts, edit videos, manage files, actually run complex workflows. And I feel like you're compromising every single step of the way. You don't have to change what you're doing to suit the iPad anymore. And for the first time in years, the iPad doesn't feel like a compromise. It doesn't feel like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. It finally feels like Apple understands the assignment, what people have been asking for since 2015. And while I'm not handing out blind trust anymore, it's still Apple we're talking about, I will say this. If they follow through on what they just previewed, the iPad might finally live up to its potential. Of course, still time for, mess ups. Maybe the best features get delayed until iPadOS 27. Maybe only available on M4 models. Maybe just current betas have it and then it'll get removed. Maybe they slap some weird limitation on that requires a $150 accessory no one asked for. We've all seen versions of those movies before. For now, I'm choosing cautious optimism. Apple's making the right noises. They're giving iPad real tools, treating it less like a toy, more like a tool, and that's a version of the iPad I've been waiting for. Whether it actually delivers, we'll see. That's a review for another day. I'm gonna wait until we get a full release in the fall. So here we are. After years of hardware that was too good for its own software, after watching Apple tiptoe around what the iPad could be, we might finally be entering the era where it all clicks. Not because they reinvented the wheel, because they finally decided to stop holding it back. Look, like you have been burned before. We all have. There's still a chance it's turned into another half step that gets abandoned a year later. But right now, for the first time in a long time, it feels like Apple isn't just promising the future of the iPad. They're actually building it. Now it's on them to prove they actually mean it.